The village of Mmeeri sat on a stretch of rolling green hills, dotted with thatched huts and red earth pathways. Life in the village was simple, yet deeply intertwined with customs and traditions. For Weke, those customs had become her greatest burden. Her husband Obere had died 3 years ago, leaving her and their only child, Mmeeri, to fend for themselves. In Mmeeri, burying the dead was not just a family responsibility, it was a community obligation. A proper burial included a feast ceremonies and the slaughtering of livestock. Without this rite, the deceased was believed to wander restlessly in the afterlife. Obere's body had remained in the morgue all this time because Weke simply couldn't afford the burial. The elders whispered about it during their council meetings. A disgrace, they said. She brings shame to her husband's lineage. Villagers pointed fingers at Weke's walk past, their judgment adding to the weight she carried on her shoulder. Each night, Weke sat by the fire in her small hut, staring at the embers. Mmeeri would sit beside her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. "Mama," Mmeeri said one evening, breaking the silence, "why do they hate us so much?" "They don't hate us, my child," Weke replied, forcing a weak smile. "They just don't understand what it means to have nothing." One morning, after a sleepless night, Weke decided to do something she had avoided for years. She would go to Otumba, the weirdest man in the village, and beg for help. Otumba was a man of immense power and influence. His compound was the largest in Mmeeri, and his wealth was said to rival that of neighboring village chiefs. "Mama, must you go to him?" Mmeeri asked as Weke tied her wrapper tightly around her waist. "Yes, my child," Weke said firmly. "I have no other choice. Your father deserves to rest." Weke walked to Otumba's compound with trembling legs. The gate, made of polished iron, loomed before her. Two guards stood at attention, their spears gleaming in the sunlight. "I am here to see Otumba," Weke said hesitantly. The guards exchanged glances before opening the gate. "Wait here," one of them said, as he disappeared into the house. When Weke was finally ushered into Otumba's sitting room, she felt as though she had stepped into another world. The room was adorned with expensive furniture, intricate carvings, and gold-plated ornaments. Otumba himself sat on a leather chair, his gaze as sharp as a blade. "Weke," he said, his deep voice echoing in the room, "what brings you to my house?" "Sir, I need your help." Weke began bowing low. "My husband's body has been in the morgue for 3 years. I cannot afford to bury him. Please, I beg you for assistance." Otumba stroked his chin thoughtfully. "You know I do not give out money without something in return. What can you offer me?" She hesitated, her heart sinking. She had nothing to offer, nothing but her daughter. The thought made her stomach churn, but desperation clouded her judgment. "I have a daughter," she said finally. "She is obedient and hardworking. She can stay with you and work with you until I repay the debt." Otumba's eyebrow rose slightly. "Your daughter, you said? How old is she?" "She is 12 years, Weke replied. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his finger on the armrest. "Very well," he said, after a long pause. "Bring her to me. I will pay for the burial. But until you repay me, she will stay here as collateral." Mmeeri cried when her mother told her about the arrangement. "Mama, why me? Why must I go?" "Because I have no other choice," Weke said, her voice breaking. "You are my only hope." The day Mmeeri moved into Otumba's house was one of the hardest days of her life. She stood at the entrance of the grand compound, clutching a small bag of clothes. Nweke hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Be strong, my child," Nweke whispered. "God will not abandon us." Mmeeri nodded, wiping her tears. "I'll be fine, Mama. Don't worry about me." Life in Otumba's house was nothing like what Mmeeri had known. The compound was hostly with servants, but Mmeeri was given the most menial task. She scrubbed floor, fetched water, and cooked meals. Otumba was strict and his rules were unwavering. But despite the hardships, Mmeeri remained strong. She prayed every night, asking God for strength and guidance. Over time, she learned to adapt to her new life. Years passed, and Mmeeri blossomed into a new young woman. Her beauty did not go unnoticed, and many young men in the village began to take interest in her. But Mmeeri kept her distance, focusing on her duties and her prayers. Meanwhile, Nweke struggled to repay her debts. Every time she saved a little money, an emergency would arise: a sick neighbor needing help, a storm that destroyed her roof, or a bad harvest. The debt seemed insurmountable, and the guilt weighed heavy on her. Each time she visited Mmeeri, she would apologize profusely. "Mama, it's okay," Mmeeri would say, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "God will make a way for us." But as the years went by, hope began to wane. One evening, Mmeeri turned 18. Otumba called her and Nweke to her meeting. His tone was grave as he dressed them. "Nweke, it has been 6 years and you have not repaid your debt," he said. "I have been patient, but my patience has limits. It's time for me to take what is owed." Nweke's heart sank. "What do you mean, sir?" "I mean that Mmeeri will become my wife," Otumba said matter-of-factly. The word hit both women like a thunderbolt. "My wife?" Mmeeri gasped, her voice shaking. "Yes," Otumba said. "I've provided for you all these years. It is only fair." Mmeeri's eyes filled with tears. "But you are like a grandfather to me." "You have no choice," Otumba said coldly. The traditional wedding would take place in 2 weeks. The wedding day arrived, and the village gathered at Otumba's compound. Mmeeri, dressed in traditional attire, looked like a queen, but her heart was heavy. As she approached Otumba's with a cup of palm wine, a young man stepped forward and intercepted her. Without a word, he took the cup and drank it. The crowd gasped. It was Somadina, Otumba's son, who had just returned from abroad. Otumba stood up, smiling. "Friends and family, I have an announcement," he began. "This wedding was never meant to be mine. Mmeeri has been like a daughter to me. I raised her so she could marry my son, Somadina." The crowd erupted in applause as Somadina took Mmeeri's hand. As Otumba revealed his true intentions, the village erupted in murmurs of shock and surprise. Some villagers clapped in admiration while others whispered in disbelief at his unexpected generosity. For years, they had regarded Otumba as a shrewd, self-serving man, but his actions proved there was more to him than what they imagined. Mmeeri stood frozen, her eyes locked on Somadina, who had boldly intercepted her path with the cup of palm wine. Her heart raced, her mind flooded with questions. Who is he? Why did he step in? Otumba's voice boomed over the murmuring crowd. "My people," he said, raising his hands for silence. "When Nweke came to me years ago, I saw a woman of dignity and faith. Despite her trials, I could not stand by and watch her suffer. My son Somadina has been abroad preparing for this day. Mmeeri has been raised in my house, not as a servant but as a future daughter-in-law. Today they will unite as husband and wife." The villagers cheered, some shouting blessings over Nweke and her daughter. Tears streamed down Nweke's face as she fell to her knees, lifting her hands to the heavens in gratitude. Chineke, I thank you. You are indeed a faithful God. Mmeeri was still too stoned to speak as Somadina approached her. He gently took her hand, smiling warmly. "I'm sorry for the shock," he said softly. "I wanted to make the moment memorable for you." Mmeeri's cheek flushed. She had never imagined her life could change so drastically in an instant. She had spent years on Tilba's house, working hard and accepting her fate, only to find herself as the center of a love story she hadn't seen coming. As the festivities began, Mmeeri and Somadina were seated side by side. Villagers crowded around them, singing and dancing in celebration. Somadina leaned closer to her. "I've heard so much about you, Mmeeri," he said. "My father spoke highly of your resilience and kindness. I'm honored to marry someone as remarkable as you." Mmeeri finally found her voice. "But I don't know anything about you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's start today," Somadina replied with a grin. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, Weke sought out Otumba. She found him sitting in his courtyard, watching the flickering flames of a lantern. She knelt before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Otumba, I don't have the words to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have not only saved my family's name, but have given my daughter a future I could never have dreamed of. May God bless you abundantly." Otumba looked at her with a rare softness. "Weke, you have always been a woman of faith and integrity. I saw something in you that day, something that reminded me of my mother, who raised me with nothing but her prayers and hard work. I couldn't let you face this alone." Tears streamed down Weke's face as she reached out to grasp his hand. "You are a true father," she said. In the weeks that followed, Mmeeri and Somadina began their journey as husband and wife. Despite the suddenness of their union, they quickly discovered they shared a deep connection. Somadina was kind and patient, eager to learn about Mmeeri's life and dreams. He shared stories of his time abroad, his studies and his hope for their future together. Mmeeri in turn opened up about her struggles and the lessons she had learned during her years in Otumba's household. One evening, as they walked through the village hand in hand, Mmeeri paused and looked up at the stars. "Do you think God has a plan for every step we take?" she asked. "I believe he does," Somadina replied, "and I believe his plan brought us together for a reason." With Mmeeri happily married, Weke's life also began to change. Somadina insisted on helping her rebuild her home, and Otumba ensured she was provided with enough resources to start a small business. Weke became a beacon of hope for other widows in the village, sharing her testimonies and encouraging them to trust in God's faithfulness. "God's timing is perfect," she often said. "Even when it seems like he is silent, he is working behind the scene." Years later, Mmeeri and Somadina became pillars of their community, known for their generosity and love for God. They often hosted prayers meetings in their home, where Mmeeri shared her story with others. "When I thought my life was over," she would say, "God showed me that he had a plan all along." Never lose faith, no matter how dark the road may seem.